So hello and welcome back to this channel, and this video is one I'm really excited about because just reflecting upon the past really allows me to see how far I've come and how, if I've come this far, just how so much I can grow and develop in my journey to becoming a psychologist. So my name is Ruth and currently I am a trainee clinical associate psychologist. So that consists of 50%, well not 50, but 3 days a week doing clinical work, and then Thursdays and Fridays are me studying at the University of Exeter. Hi there, so before we actually get into this video, I would like to remind you that subscription is free, so make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and let's get this conversation going. So I would like to share with you my journey from the first conscious moment of psychology to now, and I'm hoping that this video would encourage you and also inspire you, because I honestly believe that becoming a psychologist is a journey in itself, and sometimes you may feel discouraged, but I honestly feel there is so much power in other people sharing their story, because as we share our story, we can be encouraged. And in those moments where we feel like, wow, am I the only one who's going through this setback? Am I the only one going through this struggle? We can remember that, someone else has been through it, and we can also go through it and also overcome, continue in pursuing this path of psychology. So I would like to start with the ending of GCSE. So in my mind, my strong subject in my GCSE was going to be maths and also religious studies, which is also philosophy and ethics as well. But when I got my results, I was a bit sad when it came to the maths element, because I had always been that person that maths was such a strong point in my journey. And I honestly believe that there were some setbacks that happened probably from the age of 15, and my career in maths was just going downhill. I just honestly don't know. So before, in primary school, I was in gifted and talented, and that was mostly due to my maths, and many opportunities opened because when I went to secondary school at 13, I did this math challenge, which was literally only for certain people. And then I just honestly felt that maths was this thing. But I think what was my downfall is I honestly felt, this was a subject, it was natural. So I wasn't putting as much work as I needed to, especially in the latter part of my GCSEs. And I feel like I got distracted with certain things around that time. So at this time in secondary school, prior to this, I was an A and an A-star student. And I honestly felt that those were the grades that I was going to get in maths. So when my results came, I got a B. And to me, at the time, it was like this failure, because I could do a paper, mock papers, I always would get at least an A and an A-star. So there was this detour in my experiences in terms of what I would choose as subjects when it came to A-level, even though I think you could have still chosen maths with a B, but I was just so discouraged. And then I think even added to my discouragement, I asked people at the time, what would they think of me doing, not me personally, but their experiences in doing a maths A-level. And many people are like, no, it was hard, I just don't understand why I did it. So that just fed into my doubts. But looking back, I think I should have just taken it, learned from my mistakes, and just put in the work in my A-level. So this was how I was feeling when I was going into A-levels. And because of that, I think I needed to choose another subject that I was going to do. So at the time, I thought philosophy and ethics was going to be the one, because it's a strong topic of mine and I find it interesting. Drama as well was also a strong point of mine, so I chose that. And then psychology, on the other hand, was literally something I'd never heard before. I couldn't even pronounce it. I think it took me months to be able to pronounce the word psychology, and I honestly didn't know what it was about. So I was just so intrigued because I just saw the word and I thought, wow, what is this? I've never heard it. Let me just choose it. So I was just quite oblivious. And then because I also heard that sociology was kind of like psychology, so I ended up choosing those for A-level. So throughout my A-level course, philosophy and psychology ended up being the ones that I was more gravitating to, especially when I got my end results and kind of saw what I did well in terms of like the modules. So for psychology, I honestly saw that I did really well when it came to like lab reports and writing things like that. And I honestly believe it was the strength of maths in me that allowed me to do that. But overall, when it came to essays, they were just generally average in my study career. So that was what I did. Around this time, I was torn between philosophy and torn between psychology. And I ended up just thinking to myself, let me just combine this. I had done some research and I heard that you can literally combine psychology and philosophy. So at this time, even though now the course doesn't exist, this course was not accredited. And this means that if a course is not accredited, you either have to do extra modules when you finish, or you have to do a conversion course, and you cannot basically get a job that is like the job I'm in now, even an assistant psychology job, because you always need to have this BPS accreditation to get a psychology related job. So at the time of me studying at this university, my related work experience was literally broad. I feel like most of my jobs in this university was more to do with like mentorship and helping people from backgrounds who university may not be a thing, so widening participation. That was something that I kind of worked with quite a lot. So I was a student mentor. But something that I would say was quite relevant, two things actually that I remember, was one of them was a health related work experience. I worked with a company and I basically was a health mentor. And the thing that I would say was quite related is that I was able to work with different people. So I was able to work with offenders. I was able to work with refugees. I was able to work with people with learning disabilities. So I would say that was like the psychology element. So my role in that was to be basically promoting health and well-being, which I'm quite passionate about. But I would say the psychology side to it was working with people who may seem disadvantaged to society or quite challenging, especially the ex-offenders. So that was like my relevant work experience. So I did that for a bit before basically they got no funding and that company stopped. But I would say I really enjoyed that because it was my passions, health, and also helping and presentation and just basically helping people as well in that area. So those were like the relevant things I would say that I did in that university. But as I mentioned before, this course was not accredited. And I honestly had a setback that at the time I thought, this is wow, I can't believe this is happening. But then on the other side, I saw how this setback worked together for good. So in my second year of this university with psychology and philosophy, I found that at the end, I got this letter home, long story short, saying that I couldn't come back to university. But then this was actually an error. But in this time period, I had like 3 weeks to basically find another university, and I chose to study elsewhere. And then later on, it was a mistake. But I honestly felt that that was literally a divine intervention, because the course I ended up choosing, even though I had to start the year again, do second year again, that course was accredited. So even though I had this step back, it was actually a step in the right direction. So 2015 now, doing second year again, I moved to this university and I absolutely love it. It's a small university, love the staff. It's just such a environment that I feel like I can learn and to develop. And it was just like a fresh start for me. The area was quite green and things like that. So it was like a step back, but a step in the right direction. And thinking about my work experience here, I would honestly say, thinking about how many years was it? It was basically 2 years, and then I ended up doing a year abroad. So I added another year onto my course. But I would honestly say here, there wasn't 100% psychology related roles. I literally done every job. Literally, I worked as a cleaner for a holiday campsite. I did accountancy, I did bookkeeping, I did a lot of student mentorship. And I also was a student leader, which is also linked, and also that was linked to widening participation. So the only relevant roles I would say I did at that university was the student mentorship, the widened participation, which is basically encouraging people from, low income backgrounds or from backgrounds where they may not go to university, and basically encourage them to go into further education. That was also doing like workshops, science weeks, also going to schools as well and giving talks and like sharing my experience. And that was something I really realized, because I felt like talking and teaching was kind of my strength around this time. But also, actually, I forgot about one that was actually really relevant, and I sometimes still write this in my application, was at this time as well, an opportunity came for me to actually volunteer with Mind, which is a mental health charity. And this opportunity just literally came because at the time I used to help out at my university, like green part. So I used to do some gardening. And then the lady said to me, we've got this opportunity to help with Mind. Would you be interested? Because I think through our conversation, I had told her I studied psychology. So that door opened. And I felt that was a great experience. I didn't have to apply for it. I literally just went straight into the role. And that was literally my first time where I had worked with people directly with mental health issues within a service. So that was my first time. And in this role was very relaxed. It was literally just doing gardening, but also on special occasions, we would do things like Christmas decorations or just plan for themes. And it was really nice, just working in that safe environment. But I realized, I think it was closer to like the end of the project, there was not that much engagement, and like using your skills to like engage and encouraging people. That was actually good in terms of like now, because now not all the time you'll find patients want to engage in the service. So I honestly see that those experiences that may not be explicitly like, wow, a directly psychology related role, these roles have definitely helped me in understanding and also growing and developing. So after this, 2015, I also hear about an experience of going abroad. And I thought to myself, I would love to do this, even though now I was a year behind because of the things that happened. I just said to myself, life, this experience, I may not get it again, and it will be great to go abroad. So I then end up going to Norway and studying at the University of Bergen. And I honestly would say that I honestly believe that that university was amazing in the terms that it was different. I'd never really seen things like that before, in terms of, imagine if I have 10 modules. Usually, sometimes we would have one lecture for the 10 modules. But in this university, we literally had different lectures for different modules in some of my courses. And I felt that that was like a nice dynamic, because you got to meet quite a lot of lecturers and they were literally speaking about their expertise. So you could see their passion, their zeal, and things like that. And what I also liked about this university is that I was able to specialize my modules in things that I was interested in. So I remember doing a health module as well, and also one related to, I can't remember the name of the module actually, but I think it was related to mental health. And there was also one on presentation skills as well. So that was nice to just get a bit more knowledge. And also, again, when you move to a new area, that is a part of growth and development. So after this experience as well in Norway, because Norway, literally the course I did, there was no exams literally after Christmas, which was a blessing. So because Norway was extremely expensive, I decided to apply for agency work and go back to England for like a couple months, or a month was it, I think it was probably 2 months or so, to work. And this was my first ever time getting paid work with like, mental health or support work or anything like this. This was my first ever time. So this was 2016 to 17, because I think I did it for 2 months and finished in January. So this was my first ever experience. And this experience was me doing healthcare, was a healthcare assistant at a residential place with children under 18 with Asperger's, learning delay, and just things like that, autism. So this is what I was working with. But I would say for this job, it was on the high scale of autism, so Asperger's. And for me, this was my first ever time working in this environment. So I was literally thrown into the deep end. But looking back, I honestly believe that this experience for me was really what made me learn really quickly in terms of, you know, mental health and learning how to deal with things. Like, example, sometimes in these environments, they can be very aggressive physically. So you have to make sure you have a good team around you and also knowing when to ask for help. So these were things that I worked with on a day-to-day basis. So it definitely put me outside my comfort zone. And it was also nice because at this place, I think I met some educational psychologists, just asking about their journey, and just other people like the OT. So this was kind of like my first experience of meeting other professionals within like a service, and also working with people like face to face, like directly. So that was quite a nice experience, and I'm happy I did it, because even though it was only for 2 months, it just opened my eyes to the world of like mental health services and social care services. So that was my first paid experience. So I'll do the random jobs, you know, when I go back to university. But I would say the next relevant experience that I had after this time was literally, like you can go in your journey, and I would honestly say that actually no, it's not this one. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So after I graduated, I honestly felt within myself that I needed more experience, and I knew that support work roles was going to be great. So when I'd finished my course, I ended up applying for community mental health services. I think it's community mental health, and this wasn't part of the NHS. It was just like a company that I worked with elderly people, just doing community care. And this was, you know, personally, I feel like I like community care. I'm a person that likes to be outdoors and walking, you know, from places. So this as well was a great way to develop my skills, having one-to-one care. And this was me mostly working with people who were elderly, so either dementia. I also had people, I think the youngest person I worked with was probably 50, and that was really young, but most people were like older, like probably 80s or 90s or things like that. So that was literally the role, community mental health, and it was literally independent work, but also working in twos, and you would literally have call to services. So you literally only have allocations for 30 minutes, and then you have allocations for an hour or even 15 minutes to just give someone food. So it was very short. You had to be really on time, just really going to places. And through that, I would say I met quite a range of people, because you just don't know. You can go to a house and you may not return to that house again. So it was just continually building new relationships. And I think this was the time where I really saw the emphasis of, you know, getting to know people, building rapport in such a short time, because you have half an hour and this person may have never met you, and they have to trust you in order to give you personal care or to even give you a meal. So this was my also relevant experience in being a support worker or healthcare assistant within the community. And then after this, in the early year, because so much things happened, I went through a loss and all of that. At the start of this year, before I graduated, I just had this burning desire to live in Africa for 2 months or a bit long, for a good amount of time. So at this time, I thought, instead of me just going, let me just do something that would be also worthwhile in terms of giving back to people. So during this job as well, when I started this job, I told them that I was going to go away for 2 months, and I was so grateful. They were happy. They said I can still have the job when I get back. So this is the work experience, I would say, that I literally felt that doors just opened, just going to Kenya and just volunteering. So in Kenya, I did like 3 things. And the first one was a work experience working in Mathare, which is a community which I would say, in terms of Kenya, this is the most deprived place. And, you know, there's so many stories about this place, especially where I was working. It was definitely not a safe place, but I would say I'm quite adventurous. I wouldn't recommend this for everyone, but I'm quite adventurous and sometimes can be a daredevil in sometimes. So this was a good experience because it allowed me to kind of see how things were. And because this job it wasn't fixed, so there was a lot of initiative, me doing stuff. And even though it was a counseling intern job, it ended up being quite more. So me visiting people in the slums or me going to teach at a school. And at this time as well, because I didn't want to just leave Kenya and not have clinical experience, I was also at the time looking for clinical experiences because that was my aim. So I was coming to Kenya as well because of personal things, just to relax and stuff, but also to get this work experience. So at this time, I'm emailing, calling people, and I also let the lady know just my feelings about, you know, how I want a bit more clinical experience. And then I'm so grateful. I sent in my application to one place, and this was literally my favorite placement. And this was working in a community mental health, basically a mental health clinic. And this is where I would say that I saw like psychology, I saw everything, you know, and this just made me quite excited. I was so blessed, you know, at this clinic. You know, they were so helpful. They allowed me to sit into their meetings in terms of like the doctor meetings, the counseling meetings. They allowed me to do admin. It was just such a nice experience. And this is where, for me, I found that I actually prefer community mental health because of this experience and seeing how mental health could be within a community setting. So in this project, I liked it because there was autonomy, but also there were things that I could do. So when there wasn't much to do, I could literally just sit down and research and see, you know, things like, you know, what are the differences of men and women mental health? And I could just feed back to them. There was also times where I could do counseling sessions, I could do psychoeducation, or I could even just give back things, you know, like tasks to people. So this is where I would say I had the most practical experience, the beginning of my first like practical experience of what it may look like to work with mental health disorders like depression, psychosis, OCD. So in this clinic, I literally saw every type of psychosis. I even saw psychosis that was from postpartum psychosis. I literally saw everything, and I was just so amazed just to see the community feel. And I thought it's very different in terms of how it was in Kenya and how it can sometimes be in the Western world in terms of mental health, even though generally mental health is a stigma, but I would say it was mostly community based there. So this was my best experience, and I'm honestly grateful for this clinic and the one I mentioned before because they actually wrote my references for this job. I had to provide 10 references, and these 2 people, even though it's been 3 years, coming up to 3 years, they still had the heart to give me this reference. So that was really a great time. And then afterwards, I did some work in terms of learning disabilities, and this was not really long. I think this one was literally just a week or 2, and I just worked with children with learning disabilities, but also I felt I helped a bit more in terms of helping out with the organization, like daily tasks like cooking and cleaning. So this one was just a bit of a random one afterwards. So that was my experience, and I honestly believe me working in this mental health clinic literally opened doors. So the next relevant experience is I continued to do support working for a time, but then I said I really want to have more experience in. So after I finished Kenya and came back to the UK, as I mentioned, this job was here, this job was back. And I was just so excited to basically just come back. I see, like when you've come from a holiday, you just feel with this excitement that yes, you want to change the world and all of these things, or just generally just feel excited. And I just felt at this time that I wanted more related experience in terms of psychology, related experience. And this is when I started to have the epiphany of literally surrounding myself with the desired career that I want to. So after going to, this was actually just before Kenya that I had this revelation, but it went into 2019. So when I started this support worker role again, they were going, I was doing it for a while, and then I think I finished at the end of the month. So I didn't stay there for long at all, because at the time as well, I didn't have a car, and the community care began to be a bit more broader. So that means I would be very late for the patients if I was walking or taking a bus to there. So that came to an end. And then in 2019, I felt this revelation I had was strengthened in terms of me becoming more acquainted with the career that I want to go to. So this was me not necessarily getting work experience per se, but even though I did, and I will talk about it in a bit, but this was also me connecting with psychology. I was still in a place where I felt I really enjoyed the mental health clinic, but I also enjoyed the research as well. And I felt quite torn, because I felt I'm interested in health. I feel like I'm interested in many things. So I was just so torn in like where to go. And I honestly feel now that I still have this thing within me that, do I go to career? Do I go clinical? But I feel like I have an idea in my head, but I think it would get clearer as time went on. So stepped into 2019 now, back in the UK, everything. I start to go to events, and I went to I would say so many, but I don't think it was more than 5, but quite a lot. And I feel like these events really strengthened me in terms of my psychology journey. I went to an event, it's clinical psychology for me. And this was my actual first time like seeing people who were Black or Asian, in the psychology. This was literally my first ever time seeing this. So I was so amazed. I'd never seen it before. I felt so encouraged. I felt so inspired, but I also was thinking to myself, through that is clinical psychology for me. And I also went to different events. I think I went to Queen Mary's University, just listening to stories of lecturers, how they became lecturers. And I also think there was a clinical psychologist. And I was just going to these events. I went to Birmingham to listen to a talk on, I think it was ADHD and neglect or something like that. So I was just going to different places and just listening, like surrounding myself with psychology, research, and also the clinical side. And around this time as well, I was applying and even looking for work again. But that's a whole nother story. That work looking for was a long journey. And then my next relevant experience was in February 2019. I think I applied. I honestly, there's power in Facebook as well. I'm not really on it now, but I was part of this group at the time. And someone said, my workplace, they're looking for AP volunteers. And I just thought, wow, this is amazing. Let me apply. And even though this was quite far from me, it was literally just outside of London, I thought, let me apply. So things happened, I got the interview, and then I got the AP post. So I would say that was my first experience. But because this experience was very short because of situations and because I was moving on and just different things, but I would say it was really nice because this was my first ever experience within the NHS. So I'm trying to actually think if I'd ever, no, prior to this, I'd never worked in the NHS. Everything I'd done was like independent or charity or just different. So this was my first experience as an honorary psychologist, assistant psychologist. And I think that was probably for maybe 3 months. But it wasn't regular. Like I didn't work every day. Sometimes it was 1 week, every other week. So it was not regular, but it was just nice to kind of see what I may be faced with if I actually become a clinical psychologist. Because at this time, as I mentioned, I'm still battling with my head. Is it clinical? Is it research? Is it clinical? Is it research? So this was my relevant experience. And then after this, I basically had this epiphany again to just literally try and get research role, because as I just want to see, I want to see all the sides of psychology. I want to see which one is for me. So I sent emails to all around London, which I'm based at the time. Universities do have doors for me as a research student, you know, to do some research, and that is how I got an opportunity to be a research assistant. And that was another relevant experience. And I honestly feel what I really like about research is the autonomy. It was quite flexible. You know, she had things that she wanted me to go through for this literature review, and I literally would just find papers relevant. And there was another opportunity, but that kind of fell through, I think, because of funding. So I didn't actually get to do like the meta-analysis or anything like that. But that would have been great as well. But I'm happy for the opportunity I did. So because there wasn't so much to do in terms of this research role, this didn't last long. And around this time, I'm having I start applying for AP interviews. I have like 3 interviews, they're all unsuccessful. And all around this time, I've been waiting all the way from March for a job to start. And then finally in July, I get another. This is my, I would say my second paid job in terms of like mental health services. So the first one was working with Asperger's, actually third one, sorry. Second one was support worker with elderly. And then third was therapy worker. And this was, for me, I honestly feel like I really enjoyed this job. I'm laughing because I'm just like having the memories of like connections I built, and it's nice as well that I feel here and there I still are connected to the people who I'd met. Sorry, I'm still connected to the people who I'd met there here and there, like on LinkedIn, and it's just nice to see how everyone is still, you know, growing and developing in their own way. So for me, this experience was, I would say, very relevant. It was a hospital, but not a hospital. It was private. And I was mostly based in the female ward, but sometimes I was able to have more experiences. So I was able to sometimes work with the males, like if they were short staffed and they needed someone to swap. So this role, again, was very short. I only worked there for 6 weeks, I believe, from August to September. No, sorry, from July the 31st to September. And the reason why I left, because prior to this, you know, I'm a person that when things are happening in terms of me trying to make a career decision, I will literally go for anything. I was at this time looking for scholarships, looking for masters, looking for AP job, just looking for job, looking for psychology job. So something I'd looked previously in the past was scholarship. So by the time I started this job, I was thinking, am I getting this scholarship or not? And then when I'm banging the job, I find out I get this scholarship. So this was another experience where I now going from London, even this job that I'm working in is even outside of London, because I literally couldn't find anything in London, and this is the only opportunity I found. And that was great experience, working within an MDT team, seeing again OTs, doctors, nurses, psychologists. So having that team experience and seeing how that would be, you know, if I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. But also, again, I was drawn back to the research because I do this master's. And this was a great opportunity, getting this scholarship in Sheffield University. And I think I had a video about my results recently. So I did an MSc in psychological research methods. And again, even though it was a difficult time studying in COVID, it just also brought to my attention how I like presentation skills. And that was literally what I studied, I've marked strong on. So again, I'm torn as well, just going between the two. But I honestly feel like you can combine the two. You can combine like mental health research and all of that. So that was my relevant experience. And then in 2020, just before lockdown, you know, I needed some cash, and I'd been applying for a job as soon as I got to Sheffield, but it only happened until February. And that was me getting a support worker role with a non-NHS place. And this was a residential, but also it's called it's basically support worker role in terms of like washing and all of that. And this again was with elderly. So this was more added experience. And this is basically my current journey. So this happened, and then because of COVID, I didn't work there for like 4 months. So February, March, April, May, I worked for 4 months. And then when I got this current role, that's when I heard that they were bringing back all bank staff. So I started working. So that has been my journey in becoming a psychologist. And currently now I'm doing a master's with the University of Exeter, and then doing this clinical placement as well. So I would say this is, people mostly say that what I'm doing in this master's and this apprenticeship is basically like the first year of the actual clinical psychology course, because Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, I don't know why I said in that order, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is clinical practice, but now it's just all online. Thursday is university, and Friday is either study day or sometimes we do have lectures. So this is my journey to becoming a psychologist, and I hope that something in there may give you a bit of encouragement and also maybe give you ideas of like relevant work experience, because I told you guys that I had honestly been working every job, but I honestly feel like those jobs were still not in vain. Like even me cleaning, there's every lesson that I can learn. Even me doing bookkeeping, there's every lessons that I can learn. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any ideas or questions, please leave it below, and also comment below, where are you in terms of your psychology journey? What type of psychologist would you like to be? Please comment below, and see you in the next one. This was Something Worth Seeing, where we help others help themselves. See you later. Bye.